On the set of The Return of the King, there was a day when an 81-year-old actor stopped Peter Jackson mid-direction.
The world knows Viggo Mortensen as the fearless Aragorn, the ranger who became a king in The Lord of the Rings. But behind that unforgettable performance lies a remarkable story of persistence, sacrifice, and an extraordinary friendship with one of cinema's greatest legends. For years, Mortensen rarely spoke in detail about what he learned from Christopher Lee. Yet as time has passed, he has reflected more openly on the influence Lee had, not only as an actor, but as a man whose life stretched far beyond Hollywood. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, shared curiosity, and a commitment to authenticity that few actors ever achieve. It wasn't forged through dramatic speeches or public displays of admiration. Instead, it grew quietly between takes, in conversations that revealed how two very different lives could arrive at the same understanding of truth. Long before audiences associated him with Middle-earth, Viggo Mortensen's own journey was anything but ordinary. Born in New York City in 1958, he spent very little of his childhood in one place. His family moved across several countries during his early years, exposing him to different cultures, languages, and ways of life. Argentina, in particular, left a lasting impression on him, and he became fluent in Spanish while still young. These experiences shaped his outlook, making him more interested in observing people than seeking attention. Even as a child, he was drawn to stories, history, and the landscapes around him rather than the spotlight that would eventually define his career. Life changed dramatically when his parents separated. Returning to the United States with his mother and brothers meant starting over in unfamiliar surroundings. Like many young people trying to discover their purpose, Mortensen didn't immediately know what direction his life would take. After finishing university, he spent years traveling and taking whatever work he could find. He worked different jobs, lived in several countries, and embraced experiences that had little to do with acting. Looking back, those years became an education that no classroom could have provided. Every place he visited and every person he met added another layer to the quiet confidence that would later appear in his performances. Ironically, acting wasn't part of a carefully planned career strategy. What began almost by chance gradually became a calling. Instead of chasing fame, Mortensen focused on understanding the people he portrayed. Even in his earliest screen appearances during the 1980s, he approached every role with unusual dedication. Whether the part lasted only a few minutes or carried the entire story, he believed the audience should never see the actor. They should only see the character. It was an approach that earned the respect of directors, even if widespread recognition remained frustratingly out of reach. Throughout the late 1980s and much of the 1990s, Mortensen appeared in a steady stream of films. Some attracted critical praise. Others disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived in theaters. Financial success was inconsistent, and there were periods when accepting another role simply meant paying the bills. Yet one thing never changed. He refused to treat any performance as routine. If a character demanded physical preparation, he committed completely. If a role required learning a new skill or studying a different culture, he immersed himself in it. Industry insiders noticed his work ethic long before the public learned his name. Directors often describe him as an actor who disappeared into every performance. Rather than relying on rehearsed gestures or familiar expressions, he searched for the emotional truth beneath the script. That relentless commitment made him respected within Hollywood, but fame still seemed just beyond reach. Years passed, and while audiences recognized his face, very few could remember his name. It was a kind of career many talented actors experience. Constantly working yet rarely becoming the center of attention. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. Peter Jackson was preparing one of the most ambitious fantasy productions ever attempted. Bringing J.R.R. Tolkien's epic novels to the screen required years of planning, enormous financial risk, and the perfect cast. Among the most important roles was Aragorn, the reluctant heir destined to unite Middle-earth. The production had already chosen an actor for part, and filming had begun. But behind the scenes, serious concerns emerged. As the cameras rolled, it became increasingly clear that the creative team needed someone capable of carrying not just the character, but the emotional weight of the entire trilogy. Finding a replacement at such a late stage seemed almost impossible. Several well-known names were discussed, But circumstances and scheduling prevented those possibilities from becoming reality. Time was running out, and the production couldn't afford delays. Then Viggo Mortensen's name entered the conversation. At first, he wasn't convinced. The role required months away from home in New Zealand, a commitment that would keep him separated from his young son. For Mortensen, family had always come before career. Accepting the role wasn't simply about making another movie. It meant sacrificing precious time of the person who mattered most in his life. He hesitated, weighing the opportunity against his responsibilities as a father. The decision might have ended there if not for an unexpected voice. His son, already fascinated by Tolkien's novels, immediately understood what this opportunity represented. Instead of focusing on the challenges, he encouraged his father to embrace the adventure. That simple conversation changed everything. Sometimes the people closest to us recognize our future long before we do ourselves. Within days, Mortensen boarded a plane for New Zealand, stepping into one of the biggest productions in film history with almost no time to prepare. He arrived knowing few members of the cast and with enormous expectations resting on his shoulders. No one could predict that this hurried decision would not only transform his career, but also introduce him to a man whose wisdom would leave a lasting mark on his life. Christopher Lee, and that remarkable meeting would soon become one of the most meaningful chapters in Viggo Mortensen's journey. When Viggo Mortensen first stepped onto the sprawling sets of The Lord of the Rings, he wasn't arriving with months of preparation or weeks of rehearsal. He was walking into a production that was already moving at full speed. The cast had built friendships, the crew had settled into a rhythm, and the pressure to deliver one of the most anticipated fantasy films ever made was enormous. For any actor, replacing someone after filming had already begun would have been intimidating. But Mortensen didn't waste time worrying about expectations. He focused on the only thing he could control, earning the role through hard work. Rather than memorizing lines alone, he immersed himself in Aragorn's world. He spent hours studying the character's history, learning how a man burdened by destiny might think, move, and speak. Aragorn wasn't supposed to look like a polished prince. He was a wanderer who had survived years in the wilderness, carrying the weight of a forgotten kingdom on his shoulders. Mortensen believed every detail mattered, and he wanted audiences to believe they were watching someone who had truly lived that life. His commitment quickly became legendary among the cast and crew. While many productions rely heavily on lightweight prop weapons, Mortensen preferred practicing with a real steel sword whenever it was safe to do so. The extra weight changed the way he moved, making every swing feel authentic. Between takes, he continued training instead of relaxing. Sword fighting wasn't simply choreography to him. It was another language his character needed to speak naturally. His dedication extended far beyond combat scenes. Horses became an essential part of Aragorn's identity, so Mortensen spent countless hours riding, until both he and the animals trusted each other completely. That bond became so strong that after filming ended, he purchased one of the horses he had ridden throughout the trilogy. For him, the connection wasn't a publicity story. It was a continuation of a relationship that had become real through months of working together. The crew soon realized this wasn't an actor pretending to be Aragorn. In many ways, he was becoming him. That authenticity appeared on screen in countless unexpected moments. During one famous sequence, Mortensen kicked a metal helmet while searching for two missing friends. The impact broke several toes in his foot, yet the cry of pain audiences hear in the finished film wasn't acting. Cameras kept rolling, and Peter Jackson chose to keep the genuine reaction because it perfectly captured Aragorn's overwhelming emotion. Another time, a damaged tooth threatened to interrupt filming. Instead of postponing production, Mortensen visited a dentist while still wearing much of his costume, returning as quickly as possible so the schedule wouldn't be affected. Stories like these spread across the production, reinforcing his reputation as someone who never looked for shortcuts. But while audiences would eventually remember Aragorn as one of cinema's greatest heroes, another unforgettable presence quietly commanded respect behind the scenes. Christopher Lee. By the time filming began, Lee had already become a living legend. Decades before younger actors entered the industry, he had established himself through unforgettable performances that ranged from classic horror to international adventure films. His commanding voice towering presence, and unmistakable screen charisma made him instantly recognizable around the world. Yet what impressed Mortensen most had little to do with Lee's famous roles. It was his life experience. Lee belonged to a generation shaped by extraordinary events. Long before becoming one of Britain's most respected actors, he had served during the Second World War. While he rarely discussed those years in detail, everyone who spent time with him sensed there were stories he deliberately chose to keep private. He never used his past to seek admiration or attention. Instead, he carried it with quiet dignity, allowing experience, not self-promotion, to define him. That humility immediately caught Mortensen's attention. Whenever filming paused, many cast members relaxed together, joked around, or played games to pass the time. Mortensen often found himself drawn into long conversations with Lee instead. They weren't discussing celebrity gossip or Hollywood careers. Their conversations explored literature, history, mythology, languages, and the ancient legends that had inspired J.R.R. Tolkien decades earlier. Both men shared an unusual curiosity about the world. Mortensen's years of traveling had exposed him to different cultures and languages, while he possessed an extraordinary depth of historical knowledge. Those conversations soon evolved into something much deeper than ordinary workplace friendships. Mutual respect. Lee admired Mortensen's refusal to fake authenticity. Mortensen admired Lee's quiet wisdom and remarkable discipline. Neither man needed to impress the other because both recognized the same qualities they valued in themselves: patience, preparation, humility, and an unwavering respect for craftsmanship. The relationship grew naturally. One day during production, that respect became visible to everyone on set. A scene required Saruman's death, and Peter Jackson began explaining how he imagined the moment should sound. Like many directors, he wanted dramatic emotion that audiences would immediately recognize. Before cameras rolled, Christopher Lee calmly interrupted. Without raising his voice or creating tension, he explained that the suggested reaction wasn't realistic. According to Lee, someone stabbed from behind wouldn't respond with a loud cinematic scream. Instead, the body's natural reaction would force the air out in a short, restrained sound. He spoke with remarkable certainty, leaving little room for debate. The set became unusually quiet. Jackson listened carefully, rather than insisting on his original vision. He accepted Lee's explanation and adjusted the scene accordingly. It was a rare reminder that sometimes real experience teaches lessons no script or acting class can provide. For Mortensen, watching that exchange was unforgettable. It wasn't simply about one line in one scene. It demonstrated the difference between performing reality and understanding it. That lesson stayed with him long after production ended. Throughout his own career, Mortensen continued choosing roles that challenged him physically and emotionally because he believed authenticity always reached audiences more powerfully than spectacle alone. Working alongside Christopher Lee reinforced something he had already suspected. Great acting isn't about appearing convincing. It's about respecting the truth behind every moment. As filming continued across New Zealand's breathtaking landscapes, the friendship between the two actors quietly deepened. Neither could have known that years later, fans would remember not only the incredible battles and unforgettable characters of The Lord of the Rings, but also the remarkable bond that formed between a rising star and one of cinema's most respected veterans. And after the trilogy finally came to an end, the influence Christopher Lee had on Viggo Mortensen will become even more evident. Not through public speeches or dramatic tributes, but through the career choices Mortensen made for the rest of his life.